Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I just got done recording, and wouldn't you know who won the pony? YouTube seems to like the John Buttastucky singing hardware much better than my speaking hardware, and I don't know why that is, but that seems to resolve the crackling at least to some acceptable degree. So I'll just keep using it for now, but it means I'll have to do another purchase to get around it. You know, I got a request. I've always said I am a podcast for the people, and I stick by that. I am open to covering projects where somebody wants me to take a look at it. Unfortunately, this one came by my desk not by way of a calm, respectful, mindful, courteous, kind request, but rather a smarmy remark. That's okay. I want that smoke. So I'm covering this because a listener reached out on our welcome video when we switched over to our new format that you saw in our amazing intro and everything else. This listener came in. I had never heard of the listener before. Apparently he was referred, he or she. Says, name's Vabs Pafa, I believe. Quote, heard a lot about you, good radio program, but for some reason you don't talk about the cryptocurrency I invested in, Crypton. To which I responded, never heard of this, but we're always open to cover any project that somebody asks us to. Vabs Pafa, you did not ask us to cover this cryptocurrency. There was no request there. Certainly no respect there. That's okay. We like the smoke, and we don't mind covering it because it gives us something to continue practicing and getting our audio perfect. So I am covering Crypton for people, and I will do the best I can, but there's a lot to unpack with this one. And that's part of the problem I got with them, but I'm going to unpack this. Let me do the best I can to simplify this one down because I would argue this is not for your regular layman investor. Crypton, the token, actually I should say coin because it really is its own blockchain. Crypton is part of an ecosystem. The ecosystem they call Utopia. In the simplest form that I can possibly describe to you of what they created, they're trying to build basically a peer-to-peer based platform. If you know of things like BearShare, Kazaa from the olden days of music sharing and all that stuff, Kazaa in particular, you had basically the software that would run on your computer and you would connect to nodes, and you're connected peer-to-peer to these nodes. So your computer is directly talking to these nodes, and you can file share, and you actually, I believe, even had chat in it. So you're within this ecosystem. The modern equivalent of what we had back then, there used to be some protocols that let you do something similar, and they've largely gone the way of the dodo. You had BBSs that would do something like this. You had IRC that could do something like this. What they've tried to build here is they wanted to create the true decentralization that was envisioned in the original scope when we started the journey of cryptocurrency. The idea that you weren't tethered by being identified as who you are, having an IP address that recognizes where your computer is and where you're coming from, and having law enforcement be able to scan your traffic, have your emails scanned and monitored, your files scanned and download through your ISP. They were trying to build something that was going to isolate all this. That's what they refer to as Utopia. It's actually a program you download and has all these different functions inside of it. Crypton, the currency that was requested, is actually the currency for this ecosystem. And it makes a lot of promises in this currency that cause me some concern. It's also paired, not directly, but indirectly, to a stable coin called Utopia USD. Again, there's its own blockchain on this, so it's not like something you would find traded on regular. It's on exchanges, but you're not going to like have it on your Trust Wallet or something. So you're going to need to embrace the ecosystem. If you're curious about Crypton and you want to get in it, you have to go all in with their ecosystem. I'm going to describe the Crypton cryptocurrency by itself before I go into the Utopia Eco, because I think it's important to understand how the cryptocurrency plays a part in what they're trying to do. How they state it, quote, Crypton is a decentralized cryptocurrency and the main payment unit of Utopia Ecosystem. Official ticker of Crypton. Here's where I have the first problem, as petty as it sounds. Back in my day, there used to be a group, a music group, and they were called literally Bloods and Crips. If you understand gangs, Bloods and Crips are like they were mortal enemies, and it was this whole thing. All of a sudden, we get this CD come out with Bloods and Crips, and the Bloods are holding up the Pyru sign, and they're hooked with the Crips holding up the Crips sign. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was one of the best CDs of the time. If you were into rap music, I absolutely loved it. One of the songs on there was Crip, Crip, Crip. Do 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 do. So this ticker is CRP. That was the first thing I thought of. So your ticker is Crip because it's Crypton. So your ticker is Crip. Or depending on who's looking at it, your ticker is crap. I would personally have chosen a different ticker. I understand why they chose it. I might have chosen something like CTN or something else that's a little less close to crap or crip. Personal opinion. Quote, the entire process of mining and buying ecosystem resources is denominated in Crypton. Quote, Crypton was designed to provide an instant, untraceable, and irreversible means of payment, so your identity is 100% protected. Let me describe and break that down. Today in cryptocurrency, if you want to do any transactions, it is all logged on what is referred to as a blockchain. The blockchain is a fancy name for a ledger of transactions that cannot be modified, quote unquote, that cannot be reversed, quote unquote, that is publicly accessible and available. This is obviously true. Each of the networks has their own blockchain. And within the blockchain, the ledger is basically an API, meaning that somebody has to build a front end over top of it to be able to see the transactions for it. That's the reason why for the Binance Smart Chain, you have to go to BSC scan. For Ethereum, you have to go to Etherscan. For Tron, it's something totally different. For Polygon, it's Polygon scan and so on. You have to go to different ledgers, different views to see all these different transactions. As a result, there's no single point where you can see everything for a wallet. You have to actually parse it from those different ledgers in order to rebuild the story of what happened with the cryptocurrencies for the wallet. When you own the blockchain and you have your own coins or tokens on the blockchain, now that ledger should give you all transactions inherent to that blockchain. So for example, if you use Avalanche primarily and you trade USD Tether, the Avalanche on there, you trade the Binance USD that's on there, you trade the core tokens that's on there, you now have a single record of everything that's happening. This record, of course, is public. Now, nobody can trace you back to your wallet address very easily. Is it possible? Sure. It's not very easy. But since it's public, if somebody did know your wallet, they know what you have, they know what you're buying, they know what you're transacting. What the Utopia is trying to do is isolate away because they own the blockchain. They just didn't build that front end, so you can't see all the transactions. Then with the Utopia software, they're allowing you to interact and communicate with people, file share, and do all these things. But now it's all backed by this currency, this cryptocurrency that is their own, and they call it untraceable and irreversible because, of course, they don't expose their blockchain. There's a blockchain. So technically it is traceable because there has to be a blockchain because it's the only way that they can make the transaction happen. They're just not giving access, ready access to it. You have to be part of the ecosystem. Presumably there has to be a place inside here where you would see all those transactions. Quote, the purpose of mining is to promote the stability of the ecosystem by increasing the number of routing connections. Utopia rewards users that support ecosystem through mining by emission of new Cryptons. So in traditional form, let's take Ethereum Classic, let's take Bitcoin or any other ones that's proof of work. In order to make everything flow, you have miners. The miners are ultimately compensated for the work that their computers do. Without the miners doing these transactions or working these blocks, nothing works. You don't get your transfers, you don't get your buys and sells. Nothing works without these. That's proof of work. In the proof of stake, it's a different model. You need project tokens staked in different places to stabilize the transit. You need to have actual, let's say, liquidity that's staked in order to process transactions. What they're describing for Crypton is mining creates new Cryptons. Basically, it's the core of the way mining works, and that supports the ecosystem, but it also powers the routing. There's actually a video on the site, and I'll give you that here in a second, but there's a video on the site that covers how they route and how the mining, which is really what your software is doing, is doing all these processes. So when you load this all up and you're using the software and you're interacting with things, you're supporting the ecosystem too, because your computer is actually performing mining transactions. You then receive interest on your Crypton balance as one of the mining pieces. So think of it as, instead of something like unmineable, where you would mine, but all you're doing is mining, it doesn't do anything else, but it mines and then it pays you. Here, you're running a software that will let you do things like mail to people, files, chat with people, photos, and as part of the transactions and as part of the backend mining, you get access to the Crypton token and you get interest on top of the balance. Quote, unique features of Crypton include unprecedented privacy, completely untraceable transactions, there's that word again, decentralized architecture, meaning that your balance cannot be expropriated. Okay, yeah, that's not a word. I think they mean appropriated. So what they're saying is, because it's decentralized, which isn't really the reason, but what they're saying is, since it's decentralized, that your balance can never be known. It can never be discovered. It can never be found. That's not really true, because the only way that the software could display it to you is that something is able to calculate it. Otherwise, it could never display it to you. If it was only local to your software, then there'd be no way for you to transact, and there'd be no way for it to calculate the interest add. Like, in order for it to work, something has to know what the balance is, which is the software itself and presumably whatever's underneath the software. Quote, instant transaction processing time. So one of the big problems with proof of work, especially with Bitcoin, is that it gets slower during periods where it's congested. What they're claiming is that it's instant transactions because we don't have the middleman. It's all, the software is doing all the work for you, and thus there's not a middleman in place. I think that might work. Whether it works at scale is yet to be seen. Quote, all transactions are final and cannot be reversed. Goes back to what I said about blockchain and ledgers, that by default, that's how it's supposed to be. But as we see with Luna and Terra and UST, they were talking about rolling back to a snapshot. This basically says, because we own the blockchain, we take snapshots at points of time of what the blockchain transaction records look like, and we can roll back to a previous transaction set. That's its risk, because if you do that, you're harming a lot of people that had transactions since then. Quote, earnings through mining and interest on account balance. We talked about that. Built-in and secure and convenient wallet. Now, again, this is not something that you can just hold in your trust wallet. You need to embrace the ecosystem if you want to buy into it. And I believe they refer to it as UWallet. And this is not unusual. There are some wallets that are just the same, like Cardano, right? If you wanted to hold Cardano-based tokens prior, I don't even think now that Trust Wallet, for example, supports Cardano-based tokens. It supports Cardano, but not any tokens that are on the Cardano blockchain. So you'd have to hold that wallet, and I forget the name of it. I have it somewhere buried, like $2. But there's a wallet just for Cardano. So now for your layman investor, your low-level investor, your newbie investor, you're having to manage all these different wallets. You got a Trust Wallet for this, and a Coinbase for this, and a wallet for, Cardano, and a wallet for this Utopia, and a wallet for Tron, because Tron has its own wallet. Like, it starts to get really nightmarish. Nobody's ever solved that because of the way blockchains work. And then, of course, sophisticated API does not affect you or doesn't bother you. This project then is on LBank and CoinTiger, which are two major exchanges. It also has the ability to purchase it with fiat through Cryptex, and it has a peer-to-peer, and then it has its own exchange. If you want to check this out, there are two sites. And the site address is going to sound weird, so just go with it. Like I said, u.is, as in the letter U.is, is the main Utopia site. If you want to check out Utopia, I will warn you, it's a little bit confusing, but just go to u.is if you want to check out the Utopia ecosystem and what they're doing with the Crypton token. The Crypton exchange then is crp.is, and that takes you to the exchange. I will warn you there. There's a lot of foreign language stuff going on, so it may be a little bit hard to follow it. Again, there's a lot to this guy. I'm going to briefly talk about the Utopia USD I mentioned, which is their stable coin, because I think it's important because it ties to this whole thing in terms of stability and how it all correlates together. The Utopia USD, quote, stablecoin is an anonymous low-cost payment method designed to maintain one-to-one parity with the US dollar. It is built upon Utopia's serverless peer-to-peer blockchain. UUSD's value is backed by DAI cryptocurrency collateral that is publicly verifiable and equals the total supply of UUSD. Here's where I have an issue. If we're creating this ecosystem that is designed to be decoupled from everything else and truly independent, but then you back it by DAI, and I understand that DAI is to some degree anonymous, but still it's a known cryptocurrency, and then you list it on open exchanges, that means that there's not the true anonymity, because the moment that you purchase that crypto, if you buy from an exchange, that exchange has to do some KYC in most cases. You've already exposed who you are. So you'd have to purchase it from the Crypton exchange in order to maintain anonymity. The problem is that Crypton exchange, from what I can tell, is on the public web, which would be, quote, Web 2. As far as I can tell, I don't see that's on the private web. And even if it was, your ISP still knows what you're doing. Like, you're not inside the ecosystem when you're acquiring these things. So the only concern I would have, and yeah, I see it right here, with the way that it verifies against the DAI, it's an Etherscan link. Well, that's public web. So my only concern, and it may not be a concern to investors, if we're going to present Utopia as truly anonymous, to me, the acquisition of the coins, whether it's the stable coin or the Crypton, should all be inside of this wrapper, this container, so that it's truly private and truly secure, as opposed to the intake coming from outside. We can say, like Tornado Cash, that, okay, the moment that you come in the ecosystem, we, obfuscate what you're doing. They still know that you bought it. So let's say later down the road, some government decides to ban the kind of encryption that they're using. That person can get in a lot of trouble if they bought through an exchange and they went through KYC. So I'm just saying that I understand what they're trying to do, which is to make it easy to get in. I'm saying that for me, I would have made it to where you have to come in the ecosystem first to do the acquisitions for the tokens, to just protect that last line of defense, as opposed to the exchanges, and just deal with the fact that you won't have that much volume. And truthfully, LBank and CoinTiger won't move the needle in volume anyway. So again, u.is, the letter u.is, if you want to check out their site for the Utopia ecosystem, there's a lot of information that's talked about what they're doing. Again, it's intriguing. I think it's a very intriguing, very ambitious build. There's a lot here. It reminds me of the olden days of IRC and Kazaa and BearShare and everything else in what they're trying to build. And it is certainly closer to what you had before with decentralized. I will call out one thing that was in their FAQ. Somebody had asked about the code. They want to do a code review and have it be audited. And the team said that the vast majority is going to remain closed source. And I understand why. It's because they don't want their secrets getting out, or let's say a government gets access to the code and then they can hack in there. The problem with this, though, is that when you can't audit the code, you can't know if there's some sort of backdoor or some sort of rug pull to happen. Do I think it's going to do that? I don't, but it's still a risk that because we can't see the code, we can't vet what they're doing as truly legit. So that's a risk you may want to keep in mind if you buy into the project, that they might eventually scam you and take off with money we wouldn't know because we can't see the code. I perfectly understand why they do not want to expose the code. What I would like to see is some way to do a private audit, like maybe talk to, in this case, I believe they're on the Ethereum chain. So talk to one of these firms, like talk to Certic and say, is there a way we could do a private audit, even if we have to pay more money, and hide the code that you're reviewing, but at least have it where the audit was done, so that we have the credibility of our investors that, yes, we did an audit, we went through the hoops, we can't show you the code for secret reasons, and then just sign an NDA with the Certic people to make sure they don't steal the code and set up their own Utopia. That would be the only thing that I can think that your serious investor would watch out for, is if we can't get it audited, there's a huge risk on that. And two, if it's not open source, people like myself that know how to interpret the code can't see if there's something really going on. And I'll be honest with you, from a developer perspective, when I looked at their interface with the mail and the photos and everything else, I don't see a reason that they couldn't give the interface code at minimum. Just the code that drives the interface, the UI, what we see, the buttons and the functions, that's not proprietary. It's just interface. There's a button, there's a click function. Maybe you hide the back-end transaction stuff, but the interface code they should be able to do, because that should not be, like, I'm looking at this and it looks like a Java app to me. So if it's Java or .NET or whatever, they should easily be able to show that code. And maybe they just said, let's just hide it all because we can't take a risk somebody steals our work, or that some government creates a backdoor into it. I perfectly understand where they're coming from. I would just give that feedback if they're listening, and I doubt they are. There's got to be a way to meet in the middle so that investors can get the assurance that the code is legit. And the only way to do that is to either do an audit and try to negotiate private, or open up the code and just deal with the risk that somebody, opens up a copycat or something. Anyway, that's Utopia Ecosystem, the Crypton currency specifically. At letteru.is is the website. I know it's a weird name, but it's letteru.is to get to the website. Check it out. See what you think about it on the Ethereum chain. I'm personally not going to invest in this because of the closed space that they have. That's not consistent with my portfolio strategy. I want it to be able to come into my own wallet and I control it outside of the confines of some other interface. That's me personally. You ought to take a look at it, see if it makes sense for you. With that, I'm done with my lives for today, I believe. And now that I made YouTube happy with the audio, I can figure out what I'm going to do with the hardware. And then our latest podcast was uploaded and sent out, so we're good to go. Thank you once again for listening. Once again, we will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. more than likely for another update. I'm going to keep following this whole UST and Luna because now I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do, if they're going to just absolutely crap out or if they're going to make it right by investors. So if you're interested in that, tune in. Same bat time, same bat channel, 5 p.m. Pacific tomorrow, and we'll go through that start to finish and see where we're at.